Hey, how you doing? My name is Corey, and I would like to go over two rules real quick. The first rule will be for me, be respectful, and the second rule will be to be yourself and be open.
Yes. So my name is Cara M. Guzman. Thank you guys for attending our event. Um, Today we're gonna be talking about free slash hate speech. Um, we trying to understand if it's still necessary, if there's a reason for it, if there's real consequences that comes from free speech or hate speech. Um, And just remember to please answer the questions before you watch the video and just answer the another set of questions when you finish watching the videos. We appreciate it a lot.
Um, my two philosophical concepts. Um, I would like to apply those to the topic of today, which is hate speech and free speech. Um, I personally feel like as though in order to have free speech, unfortunately, hate speech is necessary. I feel like hate speech is a seed of free speech. You can use free speech for good. You can also use free speech for negative reasons as well. Um, this happens sometimes, especially in America. And I would like to give you guys an example of uh, using free speech for the wrong reasons. There was a recent Trump rally, and some of Trump's invitees or attendees, the guests there speaking on his behalf, is one of the guys were a comedian named Tony Hitchcliffe, and he said some jokes that reference Puerto Ricans, the island of Puerto Rico being an island of trash, references towards that, and also he made some racial jokes towards Black Americans with references about Halloween and carving watermelons and stuff like that. So I would like to use relativism because I feel like that concept explains that there's America's very diverse. There's a lot of cultures in America. So truth depends on that specific culture. So it depends on what culture you are. So if you're Black American, or if you're a different race or culture, if you're Black American, there's a different culture and history attached. If you're a Red Indian, there's a different culture and history attached to that. And also in Hispanics and Latinos and stuff like that, they all have a different history and culture as far as the American history. So those jokes that Tony Hitchcliffe spoke about could be taken in a negative way by these races of people. So I feel like cultural relativism marries that idea perfectly, and I would also use the other philosophical concept, rationalism. Basically, rationalism is just using logic and rationalism is using logic and reason to find truth. So basically, logic, reason, and you use those two things until you find ultimate truth. So if you dig up American history and you study each race of people's history and you study what happened to the Red Indians, what happened to the Black Americans, and the things we went through, the Hispanics as well, Latinos as well, um, you would understand how those jokes could be seen as racist or, just taken in a negative way by certain people. So make sure you pause the video and check out and read the definitions of these concepts and just to get a feel of what I'm talking about, of the definitions and stuff like that, and what they mean and how they apply to what I'm talking about. And yeah, just give us your opinion on what you think about what I just said, and and thank you.
Yes. So the analysis of my issue, I want to use two different philosophical concepts. Tori just talked about relativism and rationalism. I want to talk about ethnocentrism and absolutism. So, ethnocentrism is the belief that one culture is superior to the other. Um, I think this applies to this issue because this is like the Trump supporters believing that for some reason they, because they're a majority, they are better than all the minorities in the countries. Um, I think it's absolutely ridiculous because the people in the island don't even have the right to vote. So there's not even point to insult them. Or maybe that's the point because they cannot vote. They cannot vote for the president. Maybe that's why I'm gonna go for them and insult them too. Um, the absolutism is the belief that there's only one absolute truth. There's only one way of looking at things. There's just being close-minded. We are the only ones that are right. The way, the way that we believe is the only correct way. um, freedom freedom of speech was made in the, it comes from the constitution, and it was made to protect us from the tyranny of the government. But in this example, it is used as a weapon of separation, as a weapon of fear and hatred, yes, among specific minorities, because I believe, yeah, the more separated we are, the less people they will have to convince. Um, yes. Um, so we also have a second example. My example for speech itself, not free speech, would be Dr. Martin Luther King "I Had a Dream" speech that occurred in Washington 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by Lincoln. Um, so this is when like the abolition of slavery, and when the black community was supposed to have rights and the end of segregation. But 100 years later, still these laws were not being abided. So he reunited a lot of people in front of the Washington Memorial, and he was just speaking about that it was the time for justice to be done, um, and to end the segregation and the persecution of the black community. For this issue, I want to use two different philosophical concepts. The first one is perspectivism, which means that perspectives are individual. It's how you understand the world around you. And in this case, Martin Luther King had a different perspective of how the things were going on, and he feel that he had a purpose, and he had to step up and be the leader for his community. He was inspired by Gandhi. Um, they do believe in standing up against the government because that is legal to do and is fair to do, and that's why it was intended for. The second philosophical concept I want to talk about is existentialism. Um, and in this one, it's about the individual responsibility and their deliberate choice to follow their purpose. In this case, he was a religious leader, and because of his beliefs in God, he had to stop the suffering, the persecution, and the segregation of his people. Um, Even though it is legal, it is a right of the citizens to have free or hate speech in this country. He was murdered, and before he was murdered, he was bombed. He was stabbed in the chest. His house was set on fire. But still to this day, his words can never be silenced. I think it's a great example of why we need to have speech. It cannot be defined because if we define it, it will create censorship. Uh, but I do believe there's real consequences um, that comes from words. Um, I think it incites crime, violence against each other, and separation. It incites us to be close to themselves and close minded not to be open to hear Corey's perspective. I just want to listen to my perspective. So that's why I think it just is no way to control hate speech. The only way to control it is in the individual, to use reason and logic when we hear something, not to be guided by our emotions. Um, and to really understand that I'm not better than everybody, that we all deserve to be here, and that we all could create a better world together if we are open. Now, what's your point of view, Corey, on hate speech, free speech?
My point of view is on free speech and hate speech is that um, in order to have free speech, there's an unfortunate evil that has to be present, and that would be hate speech. That's under the banner of free speech. Um, like for example, Ms. Carla said what Martin Luther King did and what Gandhi did were all examples of how you can use free speech for positive things and to show love and to and for change and to push positive energy out there in the world. But you can also use free speech and produce bad energy as well, and negative energy and evil energy. And how do you solve this issue is the big question. How do you do that? Um, so truth is very important, so that's why we chose those concepts to kind of use those to kind of balance both sides of the issue. Um, and I also just want to say one more thing, give one more example of how you can use free speech for good. Um, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali spoke against going to the Vietnam War
Yeah.
and mistreat the people and the natives and the people that lived there, and help basically kill the Vietnamese people. Um, in Muhammad Ali's eyes, he felt like the Vietnamese people has done nothing to Black Americans. They have done nothing. They have done anything. They haven't done anything really wrong to American people. So he spoke against the war, trying to use free speech for good reasons and for loving reasons and positive reasons. So that's just another example of using free speech for good reasons. And yeah, and an example of the hate speech was the recent Trump rally that I spoke about. That's an example of hate speech, and and also her examples as well. But
Yes.
in order to have free speech, hate speech is a necessary evil
Yes,
that we
because
have to accept.
yes, I think the risk of having censorship is graded too far. Because it will, like, we already seen it in history, like Hitler, in the Talon, all these people that race to create just pain and suffering, and murder. But I think it's also like there's a need, a call for action. There's leaders that need to step up. Like as soon as someone is creating hate, someone that's created good has to step up. Like the leaders have to naturally, they have to help. I think it is in the individual responsibility, to create this balance, and to help the minorities, uh, and the people oppressed in this country. But yeah, thank you guys. Just please remember to answer the questions, and thank you so much for watching our video. I hope you guys learned something.
Thank you very much. Remember to use your souls and your hearts when you answer these questions, and try to be open minded. And thank you very much.
And peace. My daughter.